Hi, everybody. It's that time again. I have a new episode for you. Season three has been lit. I've had amazing guests throughout this whole season. And this guest is no different. He is super incredible, and I'm so grateful that I'm connected with him and that all of you get to hear his story and what he's all about. Nicholas has been training in boxing for 10 years. Oh my goodness. I love boxing so much. He also is a boxing coach. He's an NBA clinical nutritionist from London, Ontario, Canada. And he's got some really amazing information to share. He's got a wealth of knowledge. And I'm thrilled to share it with you. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you episode 5 of season 3, Nicholas of NF Boxing. Thanks for listening. Okay. Hi, everybody. It's your host of Freedom to Fight, Anura Mathis, and I have a new guest on my show. I'm super thrilled about this because I typically have a lot of BJJ practitioners, which I love BJJ, but um, I don't get a lot of boxers on my show. And I love boxing so much. I wish I could train heavily in boxing, but it is dangerous. So I have to kind of have some sort of balance. But yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, my name's Nicholas. I've been boxing for roughly 10 years, but I got into kickboxing pretty young. But yeah, during COVID, I kind of got really heavy into boxing again. So kind of backdoor into the gym. And yeah, we got after it. So
That's really when I started. I started training in Muay Thai, which I know is different than boxing. But I started 2021. Yeah, some kickboxing. Yeah. It's so fun.
yeah, kickboxing's originally what I started doing. And I got heavily into kickboxing, and then it transitioned into jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And now I've just been focusing mostly on boxing. So
You've got kind of you're well ranged. You're well versed in more than just more than just boxing.
absolutely. Yeah. I think it's
Awesome.
important.
Yeah, for sure. I think I have a secret love for wrestling, but I think it's partially because I can't find a wrestling coach. My wrestling coach moved on the East Coast. I think he's in Florida now. Um,
Oh,
Maybe I
okay.
should come to Florida. Everybody's going to Florida. I have family in
That
Florida.
seems like a place. Yeah, it seems like it's the place to come to. So
But you're not living there, are you? Are you just visiting?
I'm gonna be here probably for quite some time. I left Canada and came here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
provoked that move?
I think just the state that my country's in is just really. I don't see much of a future there, and it's not really beneficial. So I decided, you know what? I'm gonna look for something out there and just take the leap and leave. And I think it was a good decision.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
hey, I did the same thing. I'm in Colorado. I'm from Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, I just packed up my car and moved. I did it twice though, which is a crazy thing. And I opened my phone app to the news. Just start my day with
Yep.
horrible news. And Colorado is ranked number 3 of the deadliest states. Like, there's so
Yep.
much crime and violence here. Just like there's a shooting every day. It's kind of out of control. But I'm glad that I still took the leap to explore something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's dependent on the area you're in and what kind of trouble you get yourself into. And yeah, so I think most places are like that. You kind of get a bad part of everywhere, and as long as you stay away from that sort of thing, I think you're okay.
Yeah, I agree. Well, in my case, I don't feel like I can just every single time I move, I'll move to a different city and it's like, oh, this one's worse. Like, okay. I just didn't
Yeah,
know.
you definitely see the writing on the wall in some cities. I came from London, Ontario, which went from a pretty decent city, but over the last, I would say 5 years, it has gone downhill very quickly. Homelessness, drugs. Um, we have a lot of people coming into our country, and it's hard to kind of get everyone to come together on the same page, especially when you're having people from different cultures and everything coming together. I think a lot of it, the integration part, is where Canada really has a lack of being able to integrate people because we don't really have the infrastructure or the ability to do that properly.
I feel the same about Colorado. Everybody listening, I feel the same about Colorado. I just it only works in certain places when there's people that really want that change and welcome that change.
Yeah.
Like that's when it can happen. And there's got to be some preparation because our traffic is insane. This is why we're so angry and we're getting in these fights and stuff because our traffic is really terrible. It wasn't like this, 10 years ago, but it's out of control.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So tell me, Nick or Nicholas. It says Nicholas on the screen, but I'll call you Nick if you'd like me
Yeah,
to.
that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. No, Nicholas.
Nick, okay. Um, how? So what piqued your interest into boxing? Why did you pick this path?
I think so. I started out really young. I got into hockey. I played a lot of sports, baseball, hockey. I had a brother that was huge into baseball and went pretty far with it. But I didn't really care for the team aspect of hockey. So I got into figure skating because of
Wow.
Alba Stoico, who was manly. He wasn't like he wasn't a girly
No,
man.
yeah.
He made it very appealing to me, and it was an individual sport. So I figure skated for quite a few years, and I developed really fast and became, I kind of excelled people and leapfrogged a lot of people that I skated with. But what I found along the way was a lot of bullying, a lot of nonsense, which was, you know what? I don't think the teasing and the stuff was that bad. However, you get to a point where it's like, I don't want to get the crap beat out of me. So I started looking into, during high school, I started getting into boxing and looking into kickboxing, and it slowly progressed from there where I left Canada at 18 and went to Europe. I was in Europe for a while, and I got kickboxing out there and got really involved in it.
That's pretty amazing. I don't find figure skating to be that's very manly. There's a figure skater that I follow and he's in Canada. I can't remember his name. I can never remember his name. I'll send you his page, but he's phenomenal. He's this amazing
Yeah,
dancer and it takes a great amount of strength to do this and um, it
yeah,
scares me. I'm not a figure skater. I tried it one time and I cried the whole time.
yeah,
So
yeah. It takes a little getting used to falling, and you're going to fall a lot. So especially when you're learning.
I think it would be different if I just took a private lesson, but figure skating with other like
Yeah.
ice skating with other people and falling,
Yep.
that's scary because I think someone's gonna run over my hand or something.
Yeah, so we had a program when you start, and it's like an integration to it. So you're with Skate Canada, and it's basically can skate program. So you're on the ice with a bunch of other kids, and you go into these different stations and learning. But after I think 6 weeks of that, they stuck me with a private coach, and I just excelled very quickly. So that's kind of where you have to go if you want to progress very quickly. However, the cost
Sure.
was extremely high, especially at such a young age too. So
And so what about boxing? Would you say that's the same um, trajectory you should go on to become good at boxing?
yeah, I think you really have to commit yourself, right? So when I was skating, I'd be on the ice at 5 a.m. every day before school, and then I'd be on the ice again after school every day 5 days a week, 6 days a week, depending on how my body was reacting. But it's the same with boxing. When I first started with my most recent coach, Mark Guapo, one of the owners of Boomers Boxing in London, I I would train with him privately because that's all you could do at that time because of COVID. They didn't really have the gym open, especially to the public. So we kind of had to sneak around and train because people need to make a living. And yeah, that's kind of how it progressed. And when they opened up for the public again, I would train with him and then I'd stay for 2 hours and train again. I'd just keep training. I'd keep working on the things that he taught me and I worked on. And it just progressed from there where I didn't really stop. I just kept training and training and training. It's an addiction. It's kind of an addiction because you see yourself progressing and getting better, but you just, I find the better you are, the better you realize you're not. You're not as good as you think you are ever. You just got to keep working at it and keep growing and keep building, because just as much as it is about, you know, punching things and doing things, people think that boxers are not that smart, not that intelligent. It's a chess game and you have to use your brain. You have to use your head, footwork. Defense is probably your number one thing that you need to work on, and, you know, not getting hit.
Yeah. I am, I guess, kind of new to the martial arts world. I don't have that impression about boxers. Because I've trained in Muay Thai before, like I don't think you really have to think. You have to think on your feet. If you're sparring, I mean, you can only take so many hits. I mean, it's not meant to be 100% when you're sparring. Really, it should be that you're learning and not beating the shit out of each other. But um, even if there that kind of it sways into that zone where you're hitting each other too hard, you can't take too many of those
Yep.
hits. You know, especially in training if
You
you're
can't.
not in it fighting. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, a lot of people, especially when you're new, they don't know how to control the power or pull it down and tone down your power. When you're drilling, it's mutually beneficial for each person. So you want to benefit from it, but you also want that person to benefit for it. So when you're drilling back and forth, it's one of those things where I think that's where skill building comes in the most, is when you're drilling. You have your days for hard sparring, but that's not every day. That's maybe once or twice a week for hard sparring.
Sounds good to you. Yeah. It sounds good to you. Sounds good to you.
Well, I've learned a lot in the few years that I trained, and I don't know if you got a chance to look at any of my other episodes. Totally fine if you. I won't be offended if you haven't.
Yeah, I have.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Well, I sustained a concussion training in Muay Thai, and it was not a small thing. And I think that the message that I want to give to my audience is that, I mean, it's a spectrum. You know, you can have a concussion that, you know, barely affects you, and you can have one that, you know, permanently changes you if it's not fatal. And I was hospitalized because I was training with people that were not how do I want to phrase this? I don't know why I'm still trying to protect them. It's because I still have love for these people, but they were not protecting me. There was a lot of
Yeah,
jealousy there.
that's the inexperience. And that's why I always, when I was training, I would want to train with the most experienced guy in the gym, because that's where you're learning the most. They're not going to try and kill you.
Yeah.
There's no ego there. So when you're training with the more experienced athlete or fighter in any sport, you're going to excel and get better. So they know how to control, they know how to work on things. They're not out there trying to kill you.
Right.
And I mean, everyone has their moments. Like, we have a running joke between me and the coaches and stuff. When Nick goes to hard spar and I accidentally drop someone, it's not, if someone accidentally gets dropped and it's not on purpose, it just happens sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, but to intentionally go out and try and hurt people, I mean, that's not, no one's benefiting from that.
Sure. Yeah. I only sparred, let me say, like 3 times, and my whole training
Yeah.
experience, because I didn't realize how important it was. And I was, I was going to classes, but I wasn't, staying for sparring at the end of the week. And so I was really not prepared. And then I had people that were jealous and, because I'm getting promoted. I'm training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, and Muay Thai all at once, and I'm getting promoted in
Yeah.
in every area. And there are people that were not putting in that work that were jealous of of my ranking or whatever. I wasn't there for that. I didn't even think I would get promoted. But
Yeah.
I remember getting hit in one of my sparring sessions with my sensei's wife. And I can remember exactly how it happened because I dropped my hands, which you're not supposed to do.
Yep.
And she saw that opportunity, and it was almost like she wounded up her like she was trying to hit me as hard as she possibly could, and it split my lip open.
Yeah.
So she did, and I was bleeding everywhere, and it was this huge scene, but I know how to not do that. Like if I'm training with someone that I train with on a regular basis, I know how to not hurt them that way.
Yep.
It's essential. I think it's
Yeah.
essential in any skill. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's that rule where you go as hard as your partner wants to go. If your partner wants to, go hard, then you can return the favor, or you can back off and just work on your defense. And I found when I was working with people that were less skilled, I would focus on working on new things, trying to work on new skills that I'm, developing with my coaches, or I'd be working on defense. There's no point in beating up new guys. It accidentally happens where sometimes they leave or they walk into a shot, but it's not intentional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wouldn't feel good about doing something like that. I wouldn't want to intentionally harm a training partner, because then even if it was an accident, they might be out of training for a while,
Yeah.
depending on how badly they were hurt. So I want to know more about you. I want to know more about your background and what you do now, because are you a boxing coach now?
Yeah, so I started coaching and helping out with coaching and doing private coaching at Boomers. And then, so I work with a lot of different people that way. And then I'm still boxing. It's been difficult while I've been here. I've only been in Florida for 3 weeks now again this time. So I finally found a gym and be training out of there. So we'll see. Hopefully I can climb back in the ring and we'll see what happens.
Well,
so I'm excited.
If you like start fighting, like I would love to come see you fight. I would love to. Yeah, please. And Florida's not that far. I'll travel to come see you.
Yeah, and one of the things here is that, there's fights every weekend. You can go anywhere to fight here, especially amateur boxing or even professionally. In Canada, the boxing scene's not really big. You don't have that opportunity every weekend. You have like a stretch where you could get like 3-4 fights in a row, like 3-4 fights, in that month. However, you're not getting that opportunity all the time. You're only getting it occasionally. So. Yeah. And that's not guaranteed a spot because there's so many people that want to fight that you're not always guaranteed that. So there's a lot of people that don't want to fight, or they back out, or that promoter doesn't want to have that person's show. So it does get political, especially in Canada, I find. So, here, everything's political.
Yeah.
Let's face it. But you definitely have more opportunity here to either build a business, be a fighter, really in every aspect of life. You have a lot more opportunity here.
I wonder, you've only been there 3 weeks, but I wonder how the climate's going to affect you. Like from Canada to
Honestly,
Mexico.
I love it.
Yeah?
I love it. The heat doesn't bother me at all. I've been running every day, at least 6-7 miles. Some days I was running 10 miles.
Whoa.
So yeah, running's like my therapy.
Wow.
It keeps me mellow. I don't listen to any music, and I just kind of run, and it's just you work through your thoughts and your process, and it kind of keeps keeps me balanced.
I can relate to that. I was a distance runner when I was in school, so probably for about 6 years of my life, maybe a little bit longer.
No.
Um, and I
Yeah.
had a insane coach when I started high school, and we ran 10 miles a day. So that training schedule that you had, we had to run before class, and high school started at like 7:30 a.m. So up at 5, I get half of our mileage in before school started,
Yep.
which is insane. And then after school, our last class would be running. We would just run in
Yeah.
Texas in the heat. And um, she
Yeah.
wanted us to get, about
That'll do
70
it.
miles a week, even when we had
Right.
competition on the weekends. So I think I'm grateful for that time. I don't think I would repeat it, but it really kind of set me up to be an athlete for really the rest of my life.
Say Western Canada is probably your best place to go. Alberta, British Columbia, where the mountains are. It's
Yeah.
beautiful out there.
That's where
Yeah.
honestly, the mountains is what attracted me to Colorado, and I want to
Yep.
relocate to a place that has mountains, but I don't know. There's slim pickings, in the mountainous areas. I guess there's the Smoky Mountains, I guess Tennessee area, but I don't know anything about Tennessee.
Yeah, and Virginia. You have the Smoky Mountains in Virginia too. So
I gotta look into it. I gotta explore. I've got to start traveling to see some of my. I don't know if you've looked at my page or not, but I'm calling out my past guests because I want to fight. I want to fight. I would like to have a friendly sparring session with some of my guests, whether it's Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and do some demonstrations. But I'm definitely talking shit to all of my guests.
that would, that would be fun.
I think it'll be a good time. So I've got a
That's
couple scheduled already.
that's amazing. Yeah, I saw you had Dewey on, and I started following Dewey and Mike and the whole crew, the
Yeah,
Cholo MMA crew,
yeah,
back when they first started during COVID. Yeah, yeah, those guys are awesome.
they're
So
hilarious. It's really nice, and yes, I keep bringing it up because I don't think Dewey wants to fight me. I'm like, please fight me. It would be funny, but um, I don't want it to be too intimidating. The shit talking is really just to be playful. I think it's part of it, but
yep.
I don't want him to be afraid. He's gonna listen to this and be so mad. He's gonna fight me immediately.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny.
So tell me what an MBA clinical nutritionist is. What does that title mean?
So basically, the way they do, so I had a BA in nutrition in Canada, and it's very much based on just government data. It's not based on real food knowledge. It's really based off the medical system. So I decided to go back to Europe and go back to school there and get a master's in nutrition. And in a lot of the medical schools there, and same goes for, they work hand in hand with nutritionists and dietitians and anyone to do with food, because really what you consume is really going to be dependent on how healthy you are. Same with skin products, everything. So a lot of the stuff we have here, I noticed, had a ton of stuff that was all banned throughout Europe. Everything, almost, thousands of ingredients
Yeah.
that are used in the food here, products, all sorts of things. So I worked during COVID. At the beginning of COVID, I was working at a hospital in Canada, and they brought up COVID. And when COVID first happened, I got laid off, and I was like, oh, that's weird. You think they would want people working with people in that field, especially to keep your immune system strong. But there was a huge push on just everyone out of the hospital. We had half our staff walked out, unfortunately. So when I was working with patients before that, doctors sometimes wouldn't really have an explanation to get inflammation under control, because eventually when you take like a anti-inflammatory drug, it stops working. It only works for a certain period of time before it stops working. Then they would just up the dose. So I would work with patients to eat very holistic, the right way. It doesn't have to be expensive, because not everyone can afford to eat the things that are the best for us, especially here. So I would work with patients and get that under control and get them off as many medications as possible just through diet, and that's alone. That's it, and adding in walking. There was one patient that I worked with, and he was over 415 pounds. And he went from, still to this day we're in touch, he went from over 415 pounds to the same weight I am now, which is 190 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And it's just from following stuff. He obviously brought in exercise and did stuff on his own. However, that was the reason I loved working with that situation. So you can basically clear up any medications just from a healthy lifestyle. And I think we all know that. It's just they didn't really see it the same way I did. And they really wanted people eating what they would call heart healthy foods, which were not heart healthy. So they think, for instance, I cook a lot of my food very traditionally. So beef tallow, grass-fed, grass-finished beef. I don't eat a lot of chicken, especially now. You never know what's going to happen with the chickens, apparently. But yeah, a lot of it was just working with patients and getting them off the medication and clearing up inflammation. And I got diagnosed with pan-ulcerative colitis back in the end of 2016 from the hospital that I was working with. And they said basically I'd be on a medication my entire life. So I was like, this doesn't seem right. So I discovered a gentleman that lives out in Montana and has a regenerative farm. And he wrote a book called The Maker's Diet, which was all based off of what the Bible would consume, what you would eat in the Bible. And his name's Jordan Rubin. And he partnered up with a gentleman called Dr. Josh Axe, who's a world-renowned gastroenterologist. And he wrote a book called The Maker's Diet. He got Crohn's in the 80s, and he refused to cut out any part of his body. And he was dying. And then his dad found an organism in the soil, because soil-based organisms are what keep soil alive and healthy. Here in Western world, we kill everything. It's instantly sprayed, and all these chemicals, glyphosate, all the chemicals, they kill every organism in the soil. That's why they have to alternate crops to put different things back in the soil. And his dad sent him this while he was in Europe, and it was something that started to help heal him. So basically through food, I listened to the things that he said, and it cured, like I cured myself. I got myself off medications. I cured myself. And that's what made me go back and get my master's, because I realized, I was like, there's something in the midst. And you don't really realize that at first until you experience it firsthand sometimes. So it didn't make a lot of sense of the stuff they pushed, like canola oil and all the oils that didn't really work for your body. It's a lot of poison, really, and was really just engine lubricant.
Oh, goodness.
So when you actually start looking at things, it would come.
I discovered this too. So I guess this was pandemic time. Yeah, 2019 to 2020. It was an eye-opener. I was also working in a hospital. I was working at a psychiatric hospital. I'm a mental health professional, and got laid off. And there's a ton of layoffs. And but yeah, I came across the Fat Burn Fix. Dr. Catherine Shanahan, I believe. I'll like post a picture of it on this episode. But I have discovered the same thing, that they were lying to us about all these toxic oils and how. So some people will dispute if this is the healthiest way to live. I'm not arguing that I'm living the healthiest way, but I am a vegetarian, and I have looked into other diets, and there's so much that's geared for vegetarians and vegans that are healthy that it's really not healthy. They're filled with the toxic oils that changes our metabolism, and it just keeps you unhealthy. It sets you up for diabetes and other health conditions. And I just I
Sure.
just threw everything away and started over. And I was cooking plantains and vegetable oil because, of course, vegetable oil comes from vegetables, right? No, it doesn't. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
What an eye opener. But yeah, it'll change your life if you just kind of look into. I mean, it's the truth. The truth is that a lot of the things that are on our shelves in grocery stores it's just not good for you. Even if it says it's organic.
No, it's really, yeah, a lot of organic stuff, it's still sprayed in chemicals. It's just, they just limit it. They limit the chemical load, and they don't allow you to spray with glyphosate. So, but a lot of those chemicals that they spray everything with are a huge perpetuator in autoimmune diseases and cancers. And yet they still use them here. It's almost like they want us
Yeah.
sick.
For sure. That's that's all of their customers, their patients. You know, if we're sick, then they can make money off of us. And a lot of those issues run in my family, so I've got to be careful what I consume, and just continue to practice the things that I have this foundation of like having a vegetarian diet and knowing how to fast, like just like abstaining from food. It's like intermittent fasting, and quality soil and growing your own food, and distance running and things like that. I think that kind of helped me get through the craziness of the pandemic, and find a healthy lifestyle, because I don't think I was healthy. I don't think from the beginning to the end of my master's I had gained a lot of weight. I just focused on getting through that program, but I was really unhealthy at the end of it.
Yep.
They're really challenging. Getting a master's is really hard for anybody that wants to know.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. It's very time consuming, and it will definitely take the life out of you sometimes.
Seriously. I went through a counseling psychology program, and at the end of it, like most of my
I'm gonna break it
colleagues
up
went,
here.
"Oh no."
There we go.
Good. Okay, good. I just wanted to say that at the end of my counseling psychology program, most of my colleagues were depressed. We were needing to go to therapy, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it just took a lot out of us.
Yeah. And it takes a lot out of anyone. And I found that the more time I spent outside, spent out on trails running, I really got big into trail running, and with my dog most of the time. And it was one of those things where when I was out there, and I'd be out there for hours, because I wouldn't even look at my watch to see the distance. I'd just be out there running until I got tired. Some days that was 10 miles, some days that was 20 miles, and it just became a thing where, especially during COVID, I was running like upwards of 100 miles a week some weeks. And it was kind of because of David Goggins reading his book. That played a huge role in me kind of getting myself out of feeling sorry for myself, or not putting in the work that I should have been putting in, because I was frustrated with everything that was going on. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't really understand why this is all happening right now. And you get depressed, and then you can pull yourself out of that. You just have to be willing to do it, but sometimes you need a kick in the butt to do that.
I agree. Life has all kinds of wake up calls. Surprise, car accident.
It really does.
Surprise. Deal with this problem.
Yeah, surprise, get sick. And another thing, whenever I would be running, and it felt like therapy to me at that point. But there was a time where, I just, it just became all encompassing, where it was just like I'd run morning, 5 miles to start, 10 miles at night, and then I would train in between that too. Almost to the point where it was almost too much some days, but it just
Yeah.
like I slept good, I felt good, but I didn't go
Yeah.
completely crazy at that time. Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. I'm not running like that anymore, although I think I'd like to be a bit more disciplined about it. But um, what are you doing when you're running? Are you listening to anything? Do you listen to music or?
I It's just me and my thoughts. So what I do is I find that, so I actually kind of learned that from David Goggins. He said music's a cheat code, which I do agree. It does help you kind of propel sometimes. However, when I got used to just listening to my breathing, listening to myself, I'll have conversations with myself. And that's how I found myself working through all my problems. I didn't really ignore them and run away from them. I was facing them head on, because I think if you have issues, you got to face yourself head on and you got to deal with them right away, or they build up and it just tears you down.
Yeah.
So I found it really helped with
Well,
that process for me.
I think that's really profound, and it's making me think of meditation. Like that's what happens when you
Yeah,
try
it's
to
like a meditative
meditate.
state.
Yeah. And all of the thoughts
Yeah,
come up and
exactly.
like and people try to suppress those thoughts, but I don't think that's the idea. I don't think it works that way. People that have been meditating for decades still have that experience, and I think it's just part of ourselves, our consciousness, whatever you want to phrase it as, it's part of our makeup. And
Yeah.
running is an excellent tool for that.
Yeah, I found if you face your problems head on and you don't ignore them and you just deal with them, and it doesn't matter in what aspect of life, it really just, once you break through them, no matter how uncomfortable it is, it helps you grow as a person, but it also helps you in every aspect of your life. You're not hindered because of an issue that you're thinking about that you can't deal with and get rid of in your mind. You've dealt with it, you know what the issue is, and you attack it. You don't sit there and just bury those feelings deep. You just deal with it head on. And I found that having notes to myself, which in David Goggins' book was the accountability mirror, where I would stick sticky notes about like stuff that I liked about myself and accomplishments I made. And then you have the ones that you don't like and the things that you need to work on. But I think facing that visually for me head on made a big difference in where I'm at today, because I definitely dealt with a lot of mental health issues growing up, a lot of different things where I was insecure, uncomfortable in my own skin. And I think that's why I've built myself up to where I am today, because I think everyone goes through that at one point in their life, whether they want to, say that or not publicly. However, that's what made a big difference for me, was just deciding to take a direction and face it all head on. And once I started doing that, I started growing as a person. I started growing as a person professionally, and it just excelled my life to a new level.
That's so wonderful. I'm happy for you, that you found something that works for you, and a lot of men just are not interested in healing that part of themselves. So I'm glad that you're sharing this with my audience so they know it's okay for them to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they don't want to be seen as unmanly or whatever. However, if you run away from it and you bury it, you're just going to push away people in your life. You're going to make things a lot more difficult for yourself. But I think just dealing with it head on, whether a lot of people will go to therapy. I didn't really go to speak to someone about it. I just kind of dealt with it and worked through things on my own. I did deal with someone when it came to other issues of my childhood and things like that. However, I think everyone in life needs help at some point, whether it's a friend, whether it's professionally. But I think a lot of people are unwilling to admit that, especially in this day and age, because we have a lot of technology. We have a lot of things that really aren't beneficial to our health. where a lot of people are inside more. I think just going outside, leaving your phone behind, and just going and living your life. Not every aspect of your life has to be recorded, and it doesn't have to be that thing. Sometimes you just have to live in the moment and live your life. And I think people forget that because they're so glued to having something as a security blanket.
I agree. They're coping in maladaptive ways, ways that are not helpful to them. It keeps them farther and farther away from the resolution. But that's the other part of me living in this environment. Yes, I get to see mountains, but there's lots of lakes and open fields, and I live right next to a farm. It's really wonderful. But is my reception really terrible? Is
That's
it
okay.
cutting
It
out?
breaks up every once in a while. So it might, like, it seems
Dang
like
it!
mine's
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
Yeah, I was cutting out.
Okay.
That's okay.
Well,
Technology is never perfect.
it's not. It's never perfect. There's always issues. There's so many technical issues, from recording the episode to publishing it, editing it, and all of that in
Yep.
between. That it's just, it's challenging. But thank you for your patience. Um, but I was just
You're
saying that
welcome.
I live near farm animals. I live near. I mean, I'm being from Texas. Like, that's kind of my grounding point. I need to be kind of out in nature. Otherwise, if I'm in a major city and it's just everybody's fighting to get to the front of the intersection or whatever, like cutting each other off, and
Yep.
people don't even look at you or smile at you at the grocery store here. Like in Texas, in the South, people are very friendly, but people are not friendly here, and it's just kind of adding to that um, disconnection of ourselves. Like, we need to be in harmonious environments, and in nature is just that. It's in harmony on its own. So but that's why
Yeah.
I'm in this environment. Yeah. um well, you've brought it up a couple of times, so I'll just transition into talking about mental health and therapy. Did you mention that you have gone to therapy before?
Yeah. So I had an interesting childhood growing up. My parents split up when I was 10, I think, officially, but my grandmother spent a lot of time raising me. Um, and I spent the majority of my free time there as much as possible. So we lived in a little subdivision, which was the only subdivision in the area, kind of outside the city, which was really nice because I loved to be outside as a kid. But yeah, I think that dealing with your issues, especially childhood issues. So when my parents split, even before that, there was a lot of issues at home, and a lot of those, the psychological effect of abuse and being told something isn't real over and over again has a major factor in a kid's development, especially mine. And for a long time, I was angry and pissed off at the world, and I had no idea why. I didn't get it because I was being told, you're crazy, it's not real, and all these things. However, when you get older and you realize I wasn't crazy at all, and you start to deal with those issues and those traumatic things, I realized those things really hindered my abilities to create relationships with people, friendships. I found that a lot of the time when I would go out to places and there'd be a lot of people, I would think everyone thinks I'm crazy because I was told I was crazy and all this thing for so long. So when you go through that psychological abuse, it's a hard cycle to break because you don't really have or never learn those skills, how to deal with real trauma or real issues, on how to handle those things. So I had to kind of develop that on my own. So I worked through it with a professional for a couple years, and we got to the bottom of a lot of the issues. However, it was an ongoing process even afterwards.
Sure.
So it's a lot of those things where you have to face them. You face them every day. And sometimes you just remember things and you're like, oh, that's weird. You'll just be out and you'll remember something weird. But for the most part, I think where I was at, when I was 15, 16 years old to where I am today, obviously, are night and day, because you think you know everything at 15, 16 years old. You're pissed off at the world, you're angry, you don't really know how to deal with your emotions, especially coming from a environment of high stress and a lot of trauma. So you don't understand. Like when I would see like a normal family, like I'd like, oh, this is so weird. You guys are weird. Like the relationship between you two is weird. Like a mother and a daughter, or a son and his dad. It was very foreign to me, so I didn't understand that, and I didn't understand like what a real relationship with your parents was. I didn't really get that. So it was one of those things where I know I never want to be like that as a person.
Yeah.
And you start developing and learning those skills. And yeah, it was a big process for a lot of years, but it was good.
Well, thank you for sharing that, by the way. I have a lot of similarities in my background as well. I can completely relate to, in psychology world, we call it gaslighting, somebody trying to deny your reality. Yep. And that was just not just my whole childhood, but just kind of the role that my family plays on me, or places on me. And it's really challenging to detangle yourself from that. Even with therapy, I've been through years of therapy. It's not just that, it's like the integration of that too. And kind of finding your own identity. It's called individuation, but like separating yourself. Like I'm not a little kid anymore. I have an inner child, I'm connected with that part of myself, but I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to be reduced to what people think of me or what certain people think of me. And I don't want to bash my family. I love my family, but it's been such a learning experience, because I thought I was somebody else for a long time, for most of my life. The person that I thought I was wouldn't have started this podcast, wouldn't have, spoke out about some things, so it flips everything upside down. And just kind of going through those times where you remember like, oh, I was told this was that. And it's not that, just different times of the day, just like, oh, you have this realization that, oh, I'm not crazy. That's not reality. They were lying, like just to know that people that love you lie to you.
Yeah. And one of the things I realized was, so my grandmother passed away in 2014.
Sorry.
And one of the things I told myself, I was like, when she passed away, I took a huge step back. I stopped communicating with my family completely. And I think that was one of the best decisions that I ever made, because what I realized, whatever I tried to do to become successful or excel in any way, it was shut down. It was, you're crazy. It'll never work. You're not going to be able to do that. That's crazy. So what I did was I took a huge step back. I decided, even before that, I pulled back quite a bit from my mother and my brothers. And because I tried for a long time to have proper relationships with them, but it was based on me contacting them all the time. I'd have to contact them, reach out to them. And when you're in a traumatic state and you're going through that, you try to reach out. You try to get that validation and that acceptance, which never really comes. But when I pulled back and I started to work on myself and grow as a person, especially being in Europe most of the time and different parts of the country and different parts of other countries, it was one of those things where I didn't really focus on that. I was focusing on me and becoming my own individual person and who I was and who I actually was and who I knew I could be, because the gaslighting, like you said, even during COVID, she had reached out and it was gaslighting immediately. It was the same old story. And I did try to talk about that and the trauma and stuff that I went through and stuff that I said. And immediately, as you said, the gaslighting, I was told I was crazy. That never happened. You're imagining it. It's all in your head. Even to this day, if I were to contact and call, that's exactly the response I'd get.
Oh, you're talking about my life right now. We have
Yeah,
very similar
it's on.
experiences.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, in a way, I felt really shitty about myself and for myself for a long time. But what I realized was I don't need to feel shitty for myself or feel
Dan,
sorry for myself. I use that as all it's fuel. It's just fuel that propelled me in the right direction. And it was for a long time. I'll show you who I'm going to be and what I'm going to become. And then it didn't even become that anymore. It was like, it was more about me and just doing this for myself, not to prove a point anymore. But I think that's how I kind of started on this journey was I'm going to prove you all wrong and become something that you will never expect. And then
yeah,
it became more just, it became a love for it all. And it became just about bettering myself and has nothing to do with them at this point in my
yeah.
life.
Hey, same here. I think a lot of people can relate to your story. Just because
Yeah.
I feel like any abusive relationship is a narcissistic relationship. Any relationship where somebody needs to oppress you, needs to be over you. I mean, yeah, we're children at some point, but you're an adult now, you know? So the playing field should be the same. And it's not, you know, psychologically it's not. And I can say the same thing about my family, and it's with my dad and my sisters, so kind of flipped from what you said, and my brothers too. But I try. It was only me making those connections. It was. I even moved back to Texas for the same reason to try to connect with my family just last year, and it failed horribly, and I was miserable, and there was no progress, and it just every time I'll do no contact and then I'll come back trying to it's this toxic abusive relationship. That dynamic can exist in a romantic relationship, in a work, you know, relationship with anything. A relationship can exist with anything, and it just keeps you stuck. It's like a mental prison, and you're like trying to do
Yeah.
all of these things for the people that you love, but they're not going to change. People don't change until they want to, until they see a problem with
Yep.
their ways. And you know, I can still love my family without playing the same role. I don't need to be involved. I don't need to live with them, you know, or in the same city or same state as them to love them.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm like trying not to get too emotional because it's so close to home. It's just I mean, I'm very
Yeah.
close in age with my siblings. I've got two sisters and three brothers, and we're all like a kind of
Yep.
a year apart. So we're very close in age, and
That's fair.
I became a distance runner because of my siblings. My older brother was I mean, he competed in like five different events and was in the newspaper every week, and everybody just loved him. And then my sisters kind of followed, and it's like, I want to do that. So I started doing that. But um, I've realized that some of my drive comes from perfectionism. You know, I want to be perfect. And the underlying reason is because I want to be loved and accepted. And
Yeah.
that's not a good reality. I'm not going to be perfect as a human being. And I'm perfect in my own right. I needed to change that definition and change my drive. Why am I my why? Why am I doing this? And yeah, I want to show people that you know doubted me, but beyond that, I want to be the best version of myself. So um, that's the track I'm on. That's why I'm doing this show.
Yeah, and I think that's fun. It's funny that you mentioned the perfectionism part because I used to, before I'd get ready for kickboxing fight or anything, I would try and make everything perfect. And if it didn't feel perfect, I wouldn't feel ready mentally. But it's not about being perfect. It's just about the journey of it. And that's one thing I realized too was I would always strive for perfectionism all the time. I'd want everything to be perfect. If it's not perfect, it's not going to line up and I'm not going to do well. That's what I always thought, but it was never the case
I
because there was a people
sorry,
there
go
was people
ahead.
that were a lot less skilled. No, it's okay. There was people that were a lot less skilled at what I was doing that were doing well, and I was like, oh, what the heck? What am I so worried about that? And I started to kind of see it for myself.
Our mind and our bodies are not separated, and so if our minds are kind of focused on the wrong things, then it'll manifest that way. It's perfectionism is not in reality perfect. So
No.
I want to articulate that a bit better because it's false. It's just a false reality. It's not. Things can
Yeah.
look pretty and look perfect, but it's not. It's not that. It typically isn't. When everything is in place, I think real perfectionism is knowing how to deal with any obstacle, like in the best way, without like changing your values is what I'm trying to get at. Without changing,
Yeah.
like I'm not going to harm someone because I'm in this
Yeah.
situation. I'm not going to retaliate or what have you because I'm in this foreign situation. I'm going to still be able to stay grounded in who I am. I don't know when it's breaking up, so I'm like trying to give enough time.
Yeah, I lost you. I lost you for a second.
Dang it. Usually it'll show on my screen, but it's just I've tried several different platforms. This one
Yeah,
seems to
even
be
now it's
okay.
a little bit patchy, right?
Oh no. Just know that I'll be able to fix a lot of these
There
issues
we go.
by the time I
Yeah.
publish.
Okay.
Um, well, we've covered a lot. It's we've been talking for
Yeah.
almost an hour. I have a final question. I did not email you this final
Okay.
question. I don't know why I didn't email this final question to you.
That's okay. That's okay.
But
I didn't write anything down for anything. I like things to be organic and
yeah,
just kind of come out the way
I
I like things just to come out the way they're meant to anyway. So
yeah, same here. I listened to uh, a Joe Rogan episode yesterday. Sebastian, I don't know how to say his last name. The comedian Sebastian. They, I love the way that
I'll be
he.
losing you again there.
Dang it! Let me wait just a second until it
There we go. There we go.
clears up. Okay,
It
good.
reloaded there.
Goodness, it's awful. So I'll
Then
tell
immediately
you,
froze. There we go.
in part,
Here.
this is my bad on my part because I recorded locally. There's two options. You can record just through my internet connection, or I can use yours and mine. But if I use both of ours, I'll be able
Yeah.
to use different frames. So that's why I'm doing it. But it's
Yeah.
kind of like a pain in the butt trying to get through this. But anyway, I'll just say this quickly. I listened to a Joe Rogan episode with Sebastian, and I know how to say his last name, but just the flow of his conversations he's just talking to his friends, and I don't
Yeah.
have a ton of I mean, yeah, some of my guests are my friends now, but they weren't my friends when we, recorded the interview. So I just want
Yeah.
to kind of bring that aspect to every one of my episodes. Is just kind of the casual conversation, organic conversation. Um, and they talked about Mike Tyson last night and showed some
Yeah.
clips of his like really early days. Like, I love Mike Tyson. I'd love to meet him. I'd love to like convince him to somehow come on my show. I don't know how that would work, but maybe that's like a
You'll
goal.
get there. You'll
Yeah.
get there.
Maybe
Yeah.
he'll like hold pats for me or something. That'd be amazing. Um, but
Yeah.
but yeah, just talking about things that you love, I think just brings that natural quality. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a final question, but I'll leave room for you to ask me any question. I guess I should ask you, do you have any questions for me before we do that?
So what exactly took you to Colorado?
Um, I had a lot of plans. I had a lot of plans before COVID. A lot of plans. But
Yeah.
initially, I wanted to move to Colorado to pursue a PhD. Um, I wanted a
Oh,
PhD in clinical neuropsychology. Neuroscience is kind of my thing. And um, throughout my whole master's program, that's what I was talking about and integrating in that into all of my classes. I got selected to teach a PhD class or be a teaching assistant um, as a
yep.
master's level student, and it was on neuroscience and psychopharmacology, and that was just what I was going to do. That was set in stone. I need to apply to this university and relocate after I graduated. I really did do that, but things did not work out that way. um, I just
Yeah.
knew that was one of the best universities to get what I wanted, the best environments, or so I thought. Um, I needed to be around mountains. The first time I came to visit here, being from Texas and being kind of from a smaller town, like I was very sheltered. I didn't know what was out here. And so it just was the next part of my life. So I'm glad that I did it anyway. I'm glad that even though my plans didn't work out, it led me
Yeah.
to martial arts and starting this podcast. And this is where I found martial arts. So yeah, that's why I came here, and nothing worked out the way I wanted it to, and for the best, really.
I had a friend that went out there and trained at Dwayne Ludwig's gym for 6 months.
It's pretty
He
awesome.
loved it.
I've met
Yeah.
uh,
He loves it out
I've met one of the
there.
Usmans, Mohammed Usman. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, because they're out there too.
mhm,
Yeah.
in Denver. We have a picture together. I invited him on my show, but again, people don't have to care about this show. This is just something I love and something I'll do.
Yeah.
That's what Joe talked about on this most recent episode. He was just in his living. I was in my living room recording episodes,
Yep.
inviting my training partners over. My dog in the background, just making all kinds of noise. We were just hanging out, and that's kind of how I want to keep it. Is doing something that I love. If this turns into something bigger, I'm ready for it. But this is just something I think I'll just continue doing.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Very natural at it, so I think it'll work out really well.
I appreciate it. I was super nervous because it's not like before. I had interviews lined up back to back to back, and then I kind of took a little bit of a break because I'm trying something new. I want to talk more about mental health because
Yeah.
that's what I'm trained. I've got 10 years experience working in the field, got a bachelor's and master's degree, and
Little little break.
oh, dang
There we go.
it. This is something I will perfect. I need a maybe like a private studio somewhere, private office,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just want to bring more mental health to my show, and so I'm trying to do different things. So I was a little nervous, by the way, doing our interview. So I'm glad that it seemed natural.
I definitely.
You said you definitely were?
Yeah. Got a
Okay,
little trees again there.
goodness. I'm so sorry.
There we go. That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Well, do you have any other questions before I ask my final question?
It's one of those things.
Dang it.
I know, I know. I'm like, is it mine? I don't know.
It's not. It's
So,
yeah, go ahead.
so to get into what you've gotten into is like trauma, like it's trauma therapy, right?
Mhm.
Is that
Yes.
mainly what you do?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that had a lot to do with how, your childhood and everything like that.
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of trauma from very beginning to like all throughout my life.
Yeah.
I shared on my first episode of this season with Jamie
Yes.
Miller.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
Whoops.
There we go.
Okay. I just wanted to share this bit that
It's freezing up
my
there.
first episode of season 3 was with Jamie Miller.
Yep.
She's a
Okay.
former MMA fighter, but she's a domestic violence survivor.
Yeah.
And that's really what kind of got me involved in martial arts. I was in an abusive relationship and he broke my hand, my
Okay.
right hand. Yeah. And I
Shit.
had never been in a physically abusive relationship before. Not like that. I mean, slamming doors or punching holes. Not me. I'm not punching holes in walls. Past partners were, but so this was a wake up call for me, and yeah, I got right into boxing right after that. But yeah, trauma has been a part of my life for my whole life. And
Yeah.
overcoming my trauma has also been a part of my life, my whole life.
Yeah, I think that's funny how that really shapes into what we do in life and the direction it pulls us. Because a lot of me for the nutrition part, it wasn't only for myself, it was for, my entire family was extremely unhealthy. My great uncle passed away at 51. My other uncle passed away at 51. My grandmother passed away in her early 70s. My skating coach died really young. I think she was in her 40s. Yeah, so I've had like a lot of loss very early in life. So, and then I had, my, I guess my great uncle. So my grandmother's little brother that passed away, he was a very big father figure to me when my parents split up. And then his parents, I got close with her parents. They passed away shortly thereafter. So it was a lot of getting used to loss at a very young age, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing to learn those lessons young. However, it plays a role on, I think, why I fought so hard to keep those relationships with my family during that process, even though there's a lot of trauma and all that, and trying to work through it. However, things happen, and I think sometimes people think just because you're related to somebody, that you have to have those relationships. Is where, I found when I'm connected through loyalty and through people that really love you, that's your real family. It doesn't have to be a relation through blood in order to have family. So
I
I
agree.
found that really, yeah, that was a really big thing for me. And it was hard, leaving a lot of guys from the gym down there back home in London. It was kind of crazy because those guys were like family. We would treat each other like brothers. We would make jokes, some of them severely inappropriate, but like just what guys do, like what brothers will do.
Yeah.
They will bully you and treat you like shit and do it with love. And it's a lot of fun. And I think, especially in today's society, you need that as boys. You need that competition and that, back and forth banter, especially as men.
Well, I can agree. I'm not a man, but that's like my favorite part of being in those
Yeah.
communities is the talking shit and I'll
Yeah.
say like not everything from my past is bad, but I will say the way that I made like formed relationships was not healthy. Like from my family to my romantic
Yep.
relationships to even the gyms that I was a part of, that's why I got injured, because I just kind of gave everybody a pass. Like, these people are nice to me,
Yeah.
these people are, I can be in competition with these people without it being, we're trying to harm each other. But it wasn't everybody that felt that way. It wasn't everybody that was treating me the
Mhm.
same. And it's important to have discernment.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a big problem I also had, where I'd be like, oh, I would hold back. I would hold back. Oh, I don't want to hurt this person. And I would just, sometimes I'd be a punching bag. And then I made a decision. I was like, well, now it's my turn.
Yeah.
And my mindset started to switch through that process of where if you're going to hurt me, it's coming right back. If you're going to try and come at me, I will come at you. I won't be that person that takes that abuse that I took my whole life. You decide at one point in your life, now it's, those times are over. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I can relate in that.
I want to say something else that although I've suffered through a lot of trauma, and a lot of people that become therapists or psychologists or counselors or, you know, um, start in this field come from trauma as well. I don't think
Yeah.
that kind of made my decision to become a trauma therapist, but it's really important to work through your trauma, because as a
Yeah.
practitioner, as a professional, I'll just pass that on to my clients without realizing it. There's the term transference and countertransference. Countertransference is the therapist kind of projecting their trauma onto their client, and that's
Yeah.
a disservice. So I'm I really really work on myself, and there are times that I did not accept clients when I knew that I was grieving. So you went through a lot of loss at the early on in life. I went through a lot of loss through the pandemic, including losing my mom. I lost 9 people in my
Yeah.
family from 2020 to present day, and it just
Wow.
flipped my world upside down. So going through all of and I moved away. So it was like me trying to figure out who I was and what I was meant to do in my life, and then just losing people left and right. And um, I'm grateful
Yeah.
for some of that, but yeah, it's traumatic, and you have to work through it before you're ready to help other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Okay. I'm ready to ask the final question because I really want to know what
All
your
right.
answer is. Um, my show is
Okay.
called Freedom to Fight. And my final question is, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom means to me to be able to do the things that I want to do to help people. So, one of the things I haven't really spoken about, and I don't really speak to very often, was so I do security contract work. And one of the big things that I got involved in because of my childhood was kids being trafficked, specifically kids. And not just sex trafficking, a lot of organ trafficking happens in that industry, which is bigger than the sexual trafficking. That's a byproduct of it. And I feel like kids are scared. They don't speak out because they think no one's going to listen. So that was a huge thing that I wanted the freedom to be able to do. So that's a lot of the reason I took the path that I took, was because one, I didn't want to be a victim of any kind of abuse as a child anymore. And I think that's why I went down the path of martial arts. And I don't want other kids to suffer through that, because I know what it did to me. I know what it does to other kids. And to see that firsthand and to be able to give someone hope, that's what I want the freedom to do. I want the freedom to help the people that, can't really speak for themselves. That's what I want to do.
That's
That's what freedom means to me.
that's so beautiful. Um, Freedom to help oppressed people in general is my goal in life. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people, they can see it. You know, there's people that do social experiments where they'll, like, you know, take a child, and people will just stand there and then they'll be like, oh, okay, bye. And they'll just walk on like it never happened. And it's so weird to see for me that, you know, people will just walk away from a situation, whether you think it's fake or not, or set up or not. It's one of those things where if I see someone in distress, I'm not just going to walk away and not do anything. I see too many grown men, especially this day and age, that stand there and they'll just watch a situation and film it with their phone instead of getting involved. And one of the things that I was taught growing up by my grandmother, who instilled a lot of traditional values, is you don't stand there and watch, you go and help. You do something about it. And if something were to arise and I lost my life to help someone, then that's what happens. That's what men in society, and especially in our society, are supposed to do. We are supposed to be the protectors. We aren't supposed to stand there and watch as people die and get hurt.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I have that mentality, and I've been in very dangerous situations trying to help people, but you know, it's a phenomenon in societies that people will kind of be in a state of shock, even if they're filming it. You know, that's why they say in CPR training to point to somebody and tell them to call 911, because people will just stand and watch the disaster happening. Like, no, you have to pick someone to go and get help, because it's just part of I think it's a herd mentality. I'm going to look up this term and share it in this episode, but it's a phenomenon. It happens a lot.
Yeah, and one of the other things through this entire process, and through friends that I've met and made through, you know, YouTube, and it's kind of a crazy day and age where you can make a friend through Instagram. And, you know, one of the biggest things, we were very religious growing up, especially my grandmother. She did her rosary morning and night. She would, you know, do her rosary. We were raised Roman Catholic, and I'm very big in faith. And through COVID and through running and through everything, I found Jesus again. And it was one of the things that helped me get through everything. And it projected me in a way that I didn't think was really possible. And I remember going for a run. I think I was like on a 20-mile run. It was hot, it was humid, and I was just out running, and it just felt good. But I was overwhelmed with emotion. And like I felt like God was talking to me. So yeah, it's one of those things where when you find that again, you're able to really connect and find Jesus. And I think we're in some dire times where people need it. You know, I literally dropped to my knees and gave my life back to Jesus. And I've never spoken about that moment. And it's one of those things where it makes me emotional talking about it, because I know the emotion that overcame me when I felt that moment and when I had that moment. And it really, I think that was a huge thing in my life where it just really helped me grow as a person and excelled me, because it gave me the faith to know that I'm on the right path and I'm doing the right things.
I was trying to hold it back. It's just going to come out now.
Oh, I lost Lita. There we go.
That's so
I lost
beautiful.
You for a second.
I was like, don't cry. Don't cry. I kept telling myself, don't cry. It's fine for people to cry. I want people to cry whenever they feel like it, but that's very beautiful. I had a similar experience, and I'm so grateful that you shared that with me. If you've never shared that before, that's really, that's very touching.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like, a lot of people are afraid to speak out and talk about their faith, especially if you're, you know, you believe in Jesus and you read the Bible. It's a lot of things that people, you know, attack nowadays. And, you know, I'm not afraid to stand in my faith and to do that at all.
I'm glad. I feel like mental health professionals, like, therapy is a big part of healing, but if you don't
Yep.
if you don't also like find a way to talk about religion or spirituality, or however you want to phrase that, like if you don't have that other element, I just don't think that healing will be complete. Everybody needs to be connected to something, and I'm not trying to force that on anybody. My beliefs are my beliefs, but
Yeah.
I think it's essential. It's essential to have some connection.
Sorry, I lost you.
I can tell. I'm so sorry.
Okay, but
No,
I do agree with you. Everyone has their beliefs, and I think that I think you know, just talking about it isn't forcing it on someone, but we should have the freedom to talk about
yeah.
it. And it's one of those things. And a really good friend of mine that lives out in Atlanta, and I asked him for a lot of advice and guidance. He talks about it often, and he's been a huge part of my faith growing, and I often ask him for advice, and we'll send him things and ask his thoughts on it. And it's amazing that you can connect that way and connect your faith through just meeting someone randomly, and it's unexpected, or you think it's unexpected, but maybe God has plans.
Of course. Yes. I don't think anything is an accident. So
No, definitely not.
it was very, very, very wonderful to talk to you. I'm so sorry for all these technical issues. I'll buff them out in the end. Do you
Okay.
have any anything you want to promote? Do you have any like do you have a website, or do you have any place for people to find you?
Just Instagram at nf.boxing.
Okay.
And I do have Facebook as well, but yeah, that's basically it. And then my coaches back home at Boomers Boxing, they're incredible coaches. Coach Mark Guapo, Tanner Kimbark, who has a massive following on social media now with Silence Over Violence. He's an incredible coach, a great mind for boxing. If you want to learn a lot of the breakdowns and kind of see what people are thinking, he's incredible. The entire staff there is, and there's a lot of great boxers coming out of there, so they deserve a huge shout out. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am with boxing today. So, yeah, they're an incredible team, and they do a great event every year. They work with Fight to End Homelessness,
Oh, wow.
which is run by I was a coach in that last year. I'm obviously not there this year, so I won't be coaching. So I got to work with some incredible people. So it's a Fight to End Homelessness. They take 40 people, 32 of them end up fighting, and they fight for a great cause. Last year, they raised $350,000.
Wow.
So keep an eye out for that. It's called Fight to End. You can find them on Instagram, and I'm sure that Jim at Boomers Boxing on Instagram, they have a website, boomersboxing.com as well. They will be probably posting a lot on there as well about the event, which will be, the fight is usually in November, so it'll be really interesting to see how much it's growing, because last year we raised that $350,000, which was wonderful.
Amazing.
And it's done like a professional event. It's a huge thing. So yeah, it's a pretty incredible event.
We have to do that here. I have to connect with them and see how to do that here. Homelessness is something that's the top of my list to target. I mean, I just posted something about that. I guess I should repost it. Yesterday, I posted something about
it. They do a really incredible job, and they partnered up with, I guess this will be the third year with those coaches, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. So maybe I'll get back to help out a little bit here and there, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be an incredible event. Those guys deserve a lot of credit for how hard they work. So
Amazing. Well, I'd love to meet you in person at some point. Maybe we could fight.
Absolutely.
Maybe we could spar lightly. Also,
Yeah.
if you don't know, my third episode of the season was with McDojo Life, Rob Ingram.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, he's
That's
in
amazing.
Jacksonville.
That's amazing.
If you don't
Is
know
he?
that, he's in
Oh my
Jacksonville.
God.
I
I did
think
not know
I
that. I'm
think
gonna
he's
have
in
to meet him.
Jacksonville. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
have I
Well,
have offered to fight him as well. So we'll see how that works out.
yeah, that's amazing.
I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate to have all of these amazing guests on my show, including you. I think that my audience will
Appreciate
very,
it.
very much resonate with your stories and your life. So, um, yeah, that's all I have. Thanks for coming on my show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hi again. Well, that's it. Thanks so much for listening. We covered a lot of topics today, and I'd like to keep exploring those topics. I am going to release a recap of this episode, which is really just my thoughts, on this episode and some of my personal experiences, so you can get to know me better. And if you'd like, maybe I could do some live Q&As. You can ask me some questions live, Instagram or something like that. So we'll talk about it. If you'd like to find Nicholas, I'll leave his details in the description box. You can follow him on Instagram. Maybe even ask him to train you or offer some services. He's got a wealth of knowledge, as you know now. If you'd like to contact me, I'll leave all those details in the description as well. And if you'd like to support me, you can make a donation. I've got a few places where I'm accepting donations. I'm also on Patreon. I'm going to be releasing the recaps there as well for $3. That's the minimum that I can charge. And, you can also view it on YouTube and other platforms. But if you'd like to support me, that's the way to do it. I've got some new projects in the works. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for listening and supporting me. See you soon.